Inserting a screen, or replacing a screen, or replacing it again, or replacing it again can be a very simple task that you can learn right now. Yes, we are going to open up the Fusion page, but this is a beginner's guide. We're only going to add 3 new nodes, and I'll even show you a trick to track a corner that you can't even see. There's actually 5 different ways to work with Fusion inside of DaVinci Resolve, but today I'd like to focus on the new reference composition method because it can actually be really fast to swap out the inserted screen element on the edit page timeline that we're all really familiar with using a replace edit. And then you can fine-tune that timing if it's a video clip with a slip edit as well. And it's going to work directly with the native resolution of the background clip on video track 1. Real quick caveat, I'm using DaVinci Resolve 19, so this stuff may change in the future, and I'm using the studio version just because it has Magic Mask, which is like their AI automatic way to rotoscope, which we're going to need to rotoscope out of shoulder. So the footage I've got here, take a look, it's flat, it's from a Sony FX3. To deal with different color spaces and all that, Resolve has a great feature that's built in. I'm going to hit pause right now, and that's called DaVinci YRGB Color Managed. And the way you turn that on is down here, the lower right, this cog icon, click that, the 3rd tab down, Color Management. To turn on the color science to be color managed, we're going to change DaVinci YRGB here to DaVinci YRGB Color Managed, and we're going to leave this on automatic. We're going to keep this simple. DaVinci YRGB Color Manage has lots and lots of depth to it. You could study this for years, really. But I'm going to change the color processing mode to HDR. It's just a really good preset, and it takes care of pretty much everything you need. HDR basically means if you're working with log footage, you are using HDR footage, believe it or not. So I'm going to hit save, and that just basically looks like it did nothing here. And the reason it looks like it did nothing to the footage is because there's no input color space assigned to this footage. Resolve doesn't know that this clip right here, where it came from, what it was shot with. So if you are using a color managed workflow, it's important that you get that metadata from set, from your camera, how did I shoot this, and you tell Resolve what that is. Now if it's raw, you don't have to do that. But in this case, this is a ProRes clip, we've got to tell it. So the way you tell it is after you've turned DaVinci YRGB Color Managed on, you right click on a clip and then you can say input color space and change this. This is a Sony, you see all the different camera formats over here. This is a S-Gamma 3.Cine S-Log3 clip. So once I do that, now it looks normalized. It looks like it should look like on a screen. When you work color managed, this is an important thing. Everything needs to be assigned the right color space if you want this to look and work correctly. Now I've got a folder full of inserts here. These are like screenshots, they could be photographs. But these are brought in typically without metadata that tells Resolve what the color space is. So if I select all of them, you can see you can do this in batch, and I right click and say input color space. This is set to Rec 709 scene, which is not the correct gamma. This was sRGB. So I just need to go down here and assign these as well. So just remember, you need to not just take care of video footage, you need to take care of all your graphic elements as well. Now let's get stuff onto a timeline and show you how to build out a reference comp, because this is different than you're gonna find in the manual. This is what I found that has worked good for me. If I go over to my timeline bin, I'll create a new timeline. Just right click, timelines, create a new timeline. I'll call this one, I don't know, screen insert, why not? And when I do that, it just creates with the default project settings. Okay, so it's gonna be a color managed timeline. I'm gonna take my trimmed plates, that's this footage of the background plate, and I wanna get this down onto the timeline. I'm gonna do that with a drag and drop overwrite edit. There's lots of ways to do this, but one nice way to get this on there with precision is just to drag from this bin over here, and I'm going to choose overwrite. So if I just drag this, it's on a setting that remembered place on top from before, just drag it to where it says overwrite so it goes white, and it's essentially just taken this whole clip, placed it where the playhead was based off of this orange box over here. To get a screen insert down on the timeline, I'm going to go to our inserts bin and choose the checkerboard. What I like to do anytime I need to place something on top is use the command that's called place on top. So that basically avoids me from having to change this orange track destination box that's down here. So it's a little bit more user-friendly when you need to stack up graphics and that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'll drag this back to the very first frame. I'm going to hit Shift-C so it sort of zooms to fit the viewer. To use this place on top feature, I could just drag over here and go down to place on top, but I want to constrain this piece of footage here to the exact duration down here. So you can see up here, this footage is 3 seconds long. Oh, sorry, it's 3 minutes long up here. And the footage down here is 2 seconds. So what if I want this just to be the exact duration? That's where a 3-point edit comes in. I'm going to teach you a way to do that really quickly. If you want to just mark an in and out point, yes, you can come over here, mark an in and out. But if you want to mark it exactly to that duration of that clip, hit X, because X marks the spot. Right? So what it's doing is it's looking at these buttons over here and it's just saying, hey, I want to mark an in point at the beginning and end of the clip. It's perfectly set up for you to just drag from the left viewer over here down to place on top, sticks it on top. So now we have 2 elements that we need. We've got a screen insert of a checkerboard, which is going to make it super easy to align and just see the errors that may be there. And we've got a background plate. Now, the manual right now is going to tell you to select both the clips, right-click, and say Create Reference Composition. I'm going to say hold right there because that's not the way that I'm going to teach, because I think there's a better way, right? So the better way in my mind is, first, make sure you have a bin over here. I'm going to call it Comps, which that's where I'm going to keep all my reference comps. And the reason I do that, select that first in the bin, is because when you go to create this, it needs to place it somewhere in your media pool. And I wanted to say organize, so I'm going to select the comps bin first. 2 real important things about Fusion reference comps that took me forever to understand is that the bottommost clip controls the resolution automatically, and the topmost clip is what actually holds the Fusion reference comp based off of a frame range. So if there's tracking involved, you kind of need the tracking object on the top, but I also want it on the bottom because I want to use that for setting the resolution. So what I'll do is just make a little sandwich over here. On my bottommost clip, the one with the monitor, I'll hold Option to create a copy, and then Shift will constrain it from going left to right, and I'll just drag up. And now that I have these 3 available, or these 3 created on the timeline, now I can create my reference Fusion comp by selecting them all by just dragging, right-click, and then I'll go up to Create Reference Composition. And when I do that, it's going to ask me to name it. I'm going to call this Magical Insert and just hit create, and it puts it into the bin that was previously selected. And now we can go into Fusion and have some fun. We're in the Scary Fusion page, but don't worry, we're adding 3 nodes. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. Now, if it's your first time using it, I'm going to tell you, I don't like this layout right here. This is not good for the screen space that I have. So I'm going to go up to Workspace, Layout Presets, and change this to my preference, which is always going to be mid-flow vertical. It is just a way so that I can see my nodes on the right side and my viewers on the left. Now, I also only really need 1 viewer most of the time, so I'm going to choose the viewer that I want to see. And so to close this top one is you choose the one you want. Not super intuitive. So I'll choose this button right here. Now I just have 1 viewer. This is my second viewer, my 2 viewer. And then on the right side, some quick navigation stuff. Middle mouse is going to pan you around in your node flow. And then the command wheel with the mouse is going to zoom you in and out. Or if you like to use a stylus like me, you can hold middle mouse and sort of swipe left and right. The other thing I like to do over here is I like to see my sources. So I'm going to right click anywhere in the flow and I'll say Force Source Tile Pictures. And that just gives me like a little thumbnail to see what's going on. Now there's a background that's always generated automatically when you create a reference comp. And this is what's sort of setting that resolution based off of that video track 1. And for us, that's going to be the media in 1. Now, remember we made a sandwich here and we made one on top. Media in 3 is important because that's our Fusion reference comp, but I don't actually need to see that. So what's happening is here's the bottom, here's the middle, here's the top. I'm going to turn off media in 3 so that it's basically invisible. Now the way you can turn off nodes in Fusion is there's a button up here. Once you click a node, it loads the properties for that node in the inspector on the right. I'm going to click this button right here and that just turns it off. Command P will turn it off as well, just so that it's clear when it goes through. So now if I look at the media out, which is what's rendering back to the timeline, we'll actually be able to see the screen insert. Now it's not tracked, it's not positioned, corner pinned correctly yet. We're getting there. Now the way to load nodes into the viewer is you can click these little buttons here. There's little tiny buttons, but I don't like to work that way. I'll just tell you, just skip that. What you want to do, you click hard on the node you want to see and you drag it into that viewer and you'll see up at the top, now we're looking at media in 1 and we can get to tracking this sucker. So the first node we're going to add is the tracker tool. And a quick way to add a node directly after the node that you're connected to is to first select the node. So I'm selecting media in 1, see the orange box on it? and I'm going to hit Shift Spacebar. That's a shortcut sequence you're going to want to learn for Fusion. Shift Spacebar, and then just start typing TRACK, tracker, right? And then to hit add, you don't even need to use your mouse to say the add button. Just hit return. You get super fast at adding nodes this way. So we've got a tracker that's plugged directly in, and a tracker needs an input to track something. And it sets you up right away with a tracker. But you do need to not only click the tracker tool, you also want to load this into your viewer to see what it's doing when you run the track. I'm actually have control over that parameter over here. I've got this little box. I can move this around, right? I can move this up to this corner, but I'm not looking at the results. So I always recommend as soon as you load a tracker, load it into the viewer by clicking, dragging. Now we can see we're actually going to look at the results of the tracker when we start to run this. So I've got one tracker loaded in here. I'm going to just choose the 3 corners that are easiest to track first, which is going to be that upper left. Let's add another IntelliTrack over here. So we'll click another point and we'll drag that up here to the upper right. And we get kind of a zoomed in view, which is nice. And we'll drag another one, IntelliTrack. And this one ended up down here in the lower left. But this one, I can't even see that corner. We're going to deal with that in just a second. So I'm going to actually drag my IntelliTrack 3 to the lower right in this instance. And you can sort of see, we can see a corner down there, which should be a trackable feature. To start tracking this, you can start tracking from whatever frame you want. If you're gonna do match moving, it is important to know which frame you started from, but for this instance, it doesn't really matter. We're gonna hit this button right over here that tracks forward and backwards for us. And we'll see by the results, if those green lines on here stick to those corners, which they should fine, then we have a decent track. But we only have 3 corners, and we need to have 4 for corner position, which is what we need to do for a screen insert. So how are we going to get this 4th one over here? Well, the feature that I want to take a look at is, well, first I want to add another tracker. So I'm going to hit IntelliTrack, and now we have IntelliTrack 4. It's totally down here in the lower right. That's not where I need it. I'm going to drag this over to the lower left corner where I do have a few frames where I can start. I'll zoom in and really get that positioned as good as I can. And so on the last frame here, frame 47, if I start to run the track again, here's the thing that catches a lot of people. You can actually babysit each of these individually, which is something you can't do with the planar track. I'm sure you're thinking, why are you not just using the planar tracker, Chadwick? And that's because I can manually sort of supervise each one of these points right here and get really, really precise with it. You can't do that with the planar tracker that's in here. Plus, there's not tracking markers on this, like there's reflections. This is not a good candidate for the built-in Fusion planar tracker. Hey, real quick, welcome to the channel. I'm Chadwick. If you'd like to practice along with this same clip, it is available to download at creativevideotips.com when you join the Cutting Club, which is going to give you footage access to follow along with all my free YouTube tutorials. A lot are VFX related on there right now. And it's just a simple way you can help support my teaching efforts. So anyways, we've got that point set right there. But if I start to hit the track right now to start to run this, it's gonna reprocess all these that have the checkboxes turned on. So what I wanna do is I kinda wanna lock off these 3 that I think are good to go. So I'm gonna just click this twice and you'll see it goes to this sort of like circle state. Basically, this is locking it so that when I process this to start to run the track on just this one point, it's not going to ruin the work that we had already done. The other thing that's really nice in Resolve, maybe this happened in 19, is we can track frame by frame. So this button right here lets us go 1 frame at a time. So you used to have to push this, then you'd have to hit escape. No longer do you have to do that. So I can just zoom in here and sort of see when is this going to break? When is that arm going to come across that corner? So there's 1 frame, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to keep it there in that corner as long as I can. And each time I push this up, looks like we're got a problem right there. So I'm going to go back a previous keyframe, and that's the bracket keys are going to toggle you frame to frame down there on the timeline. So I'm going to go to where the last frame that looks like it held, which is probably right there. Frame 33 if you're following along at home. And then I need to find a new feature that I can track that's sort of as close as possible, hopefully on the same plane. And then there's a feature that's called Path Sensor. And this is kind of the secret to tracking things that you can't see, the Path Sensor mode. So what we're going to do from this point on to the left of the timeline where the arm goes over, I'm going to change on IntelliTrack 4 to not have path center be the pattern center, but I'm going to say it'll be track center append. And with track center append, what that allows me to do is I can move this little target area, this is basically where it's searching for, to another area that is somewhat trackable. I'm going to say in this instance, this LG logo that's over here is probably somewhat trackable. So I'm going to move my cursor on top of there. And as soon as I let go, I will just go ahead and let this rip because I know that area is not covered over again. So instead of going frame by frame, I'll just push this track backwards from this point on. And what it's done is it's taking the movement here and it's applied it to this displacement path that's over here in the lower right. So you can see it is actually tracked through, more or less, an area it couldn't see. So before I change the operation here, I do want to go back to my tracker list, and I'm just going to enable these so we can actually see what tracker names are. So that's IntelliTrack 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're backwards. What we're going to do now is we'll go to the Operation tab of the inspector with the tracker selected. And instead of saying Operation set to none, we're going to use the built-in merge that exists within the tracker tool and change this to corner positioning. Once I do that, we can just, you can see here in the merge, we have a foreground over background mode, which basically says if you've used the merge node before, yellow is background, green is foreground. Well, what's our foreground going to be? It'll be this media N2. So what this means is I can take this and disconnect it from the merge 2 that was automatically created from the reference comp by just dragging this up to here, and it's the only input that's available. And now that's going into the foreground. I don't need this merge over here, this merge 2 anymore. So I will hit delete, and that gets rid of that. Just to keep things a little bit tidy, I might move this media N2 above so you can see media N2 is going on top. But you can see, I kind of did this on purpose. The corner pin doesn't look right at all, does it? So here's the thing. You want to come over here to operation mode and take a look at these, what these top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right are mapped to. So if you did what I did, which is I tracked the easiest things first, the order is not actually correct. So you'll see over here IntelliTrack 1, that's top left, that's right. IntelliTrack 2, that's top right, and so those are good. But down here, IntelliTrack 3 is my bottom right, and Resolve, it thinks it should be IntelliTrack 4. Thankfully, there's drop downs here. You'll just change this so that IntelliTrack 3 is the bottom right, and you just say bottom left is going to be IntelliTrack 4, which is the last thing that I did. Now we're seeing something that looks a lot more acceptable. Now, the other thing that you can do with this built-in merge that's super great, especially when you're just starting out doing these screen comps, is the apply mode will let you get back reflections if you just change the way it's composited here. So instead of the normal mode, which basically says it's just a solid thing on top of another with no transparency at all, you can change the apply mode over here to screen, and now you can start to see, oh look, we're starting to see through there a little bit. Now the white is just white on this checkerboard, so if we want to see this a little bit better, you can just bring down the brightness of the checkerboard, which is the second of the 3 nodes I did want to include in here. Now we're doing shift space, and I'm going to add a brightness contrast node just to bring the brightness down a little bit. So I'll type in BC for brightness contrast, hit return, and it puts it right after in the flow. Now, if you didn't select it first, or it connected to something else, you can always move your nodes in and out of the flow by holding down shift. We'll extract it. So it's E in the color page, it's shift, and it's always different in Fusion for some reason. And then if you hold down shift again, it's a way to insert it. As soon as you get that line, that'll snap in. And if you wiggle it after it's in, that way you can tell that it's actually getting affected by it. Now, I'm just going to apply a gain adjustment, which is the simplest way to sort of bring the exposure down on here. So don't touch the brightness, touch the gain instead. And so if I bring the gain down on it, we can see through on the white a little bit more than we could before. I'm going to hit Command F, that's my fit to viewer there. And we're going to take a look and see what we have so far. I'm going to hit just the space bar. We'll preview the play out of it. And it's not bad. There's one major issue that's happening right now, though. That is that the arm over here is going over the top, sort of, but not completely. We need this to be solid so we don't see this, or it's going to ruin our effect completely. So that's going to be the third node. And like I said, only 3 nodes is what we're dealing with today. And the way we're going to deal with this is with a magic mask. And so the magic mask tool is going to work right off of our media in one node. And I'll show you another node trick here. And so before I said, you click the node, it happens right after. Sometimes you want to have a node just be placed where you want it to go down here. And the way that you do that is you click anywhere down here. Let's just click right there. And when I add the node, it'll be dropped directly where I clicked last. Totally unintuitive. It's rarely documented. But because I clicked there last, I'm going to hit Shift Space, add a magic mask. So I just start typing magic mask. And this is our automatic AI generated tool. Now to hook this up, just drag your footage directly into it and then look at the results of the magic mask. Let's load that over here. And so this is happening before we've actually added this screen to it. Not a problem. And what I want to do is I actually want to find a frame here that best represents the most of that shoulder, that arm that's going over the corner of the screen. And then I just it's got this paint, this eyedropper thing. If you've used it on the color page, it works the same here. I just select it like that, make a stroke, make it better, because why would you not make it better if you could? And then you have to run this track over here in the inspector. So the track forward and reverse. What this button is doing is it's looking at motion vectors to determine what's different about that object. And it's usually pretty decent. Not perfect, but pretty good. If your viewer over here does not look black right now, don't worry. That's a setting that I have turned on under the 3-dot menu options up here, where I turn off my checker underlay, because I just don't like that. So if you ever want to just see black, yes, it is creating transparency. But to get that shoulder back on top, I just loaded the tracker result up here again. All you need to do is inside the tracker node itself, it has this blue mask input. We just need to take the output of the magic mask, which has the alpha information, and we're going to cut away this corner, essentially, of the checkerboard from what we're putting on top. And so the way we do that is we just take the output, the gray box, plug that into the blue mask input over there, and we're getting the opposite of what we want to happen. Well, you said that was going to work. Well, what we need to do is one more step on the tracker tool itself. We'll go to the settings tab and we'll say apply mask inverted, which just swaps what it thinks is supposed to be transparent. And now we have that arm going over the top of the corner right there. Another thing that's really useful to know while we're sticking over here on this tracker tool in the settings tab is we have an option down here for motion blur, right? So the way that this tool works is because we've created keyframes that change over time and it's moving an object for us, if a thing makes a thing move, there's always a motion blur switch, and so that's going to help sell the realism a little bit more. I'll just click that. We'll leave it at the default quality too. You might want to turn this up, but this is going to put the slightest bit of blur onto whatever screen you're putting in there, so it looks more realistic to if it was actually shot that way. On the tracker itself, let's say we don't have these corners set perfect. There is the ability in here to refine this much, much further. Besides the fact that you can move this green line is wherever you need it to go, you can also set offsets and then even keyframe those offsets. So one thing I like to do after I've got this pretty well set up, I'll go to the trackers panel in the tracker, and I'll find a frame where I want to see how well is this actually sitting into the corner. So I'll zoom in there real tight. I'll choose the tracker, which is tracker 1 right here. And then down here, we have these offsets, offset 1 for X and Y. And to get started with this, I find it difficult to start working with offsets until I move it some. So I like to slide this just a little bit. And this is going to move an offset with the same movement, but it lets me sort of reposition and fine tune that corner. And once I get it out of the way, I can sort of tuck this up in the corner a little bit better. I'm going to hit this button up here, which is my offset on screen control. So once you can make that blue, now you can actually click in here and see how it made this red line. That's the offset line. Now I can drag this to the exact position that I want that screen to sit. So it sort of sit inlaid just to the monitor just a little bit. and I will come around to all corners and just set those as close as I can so that they make sense. The idea is you come to the tracker list, choose the tracker that it represents. This is track 2, IntelliTrack 2, and then you just move this offset down here, zoom in, set that where it should go, and then we'll keep just rinse and repeat. So you'll find in Fusion, you're gonna be zooming in and out a lot, but this is what's great is that the zoom position is actually relative to where your cursor is, which is a unique thing to Fusion. So I'm gonna move my, my offsets here where we're not quite as good, and then I'll just tuck that up so that it sort of blends, and then we'll go to this other corner. Again, on this one, we can only see it at the end, so I'm going to frame 47. This is IntelliTrack 4, and hey, this one's not too bad. Actually, I'll just leave that one alone. Command F to fit, and then we can sort of see how this is all looking. I would say this is definitely pretty acceptable for the start of a YouTube tutorial. Now, you can use these keyframes down here in the offsets as well. So if you need to refine this further, that's where you could do that. So the idea is you find it where it was good. Actually, I'll just show you. Let's say we liked the position of that bottom left keyframe where it is now. Select IntelliTrack 4, set keyframes by just clicking those buttons. And then once it feels like it was way off, maybe right here I needed this to be higher. See how that's dragged over the top? At this point now, I could just drag my offset. Looks like it's more the Y offset that needs to be changed. I can drag that up, and so that will interpolate over time between those two and probably give me a better result. So back on the edit page, I'm gonna hit this loop button that's right there so we can see this over and over and over again. I'm gonna hit P for presentation. Hey, it doesn't look too bad. I think it kind of passes. But now let's say the client comes back and has a change. They don't want that screen insert. Actually, that was just a temporary one anyways to get us lined up. Let's go to our Inserts tab, and I'll show you how to use one of these others as a replace edit. Why don't we choose this one? You're probably familiar with this if you have a Mac. I'm gonna select this, load it into my source. Let's close my inspector down so you can see both viewers. If you ever don't see both of these, sometimes it's because you're using a lower resolution monitor, and just closing an inspector or media pool will help solve that. Now, to do the replace edit, this one actually does require you move your orange destination box to where it needs to go. So instead of this going to video 1, I want to replace this 16:9 checkerboard over here. So I'm going to right click. This is a new thing. You have to right click on it and say video 1, I want to go to video 2. What this orange thing is really saying is what's in the left box, the left source monitor, where is that gonna land when you use the 3-point edit commands? But the ones that are not placed on top at least. And then what the replace edit does is it just aligns two playheads. It says, where's the playhead up here in the source monitor? Where's the playhead down here? And it just swaps them out for you with no in and out marks even needed. So what that means, I'm gonna move my playhead here to the very first frame, playhead here to the first frame. And the replace edit tool is such a powerful and commonly used tool. They put it in the toolbar right here. The shortcut's gonna be F11, but if I just hit it right now, you can see it just replaces that clip out, and we've got a different version ready for the client to preview. Now maybe that wasn't the correct screen that we needed to stick in there. So maybe we needed to come back over here and we wanna use this shot of London instead. It's easy, double click it to load it into the source, hit the replace button, and now we have a different shot that's edited directly into the timeline, so you can keep updating different versions. Now you can see my playback isn't super great right now. It's about as good as you can get when you're adding motion blur and using Fusion comps. So to get better playback, there is the option under the playback option here for render cache. You can set this to smart, and typically this is gonna turn your timeline red, and when it goes blue, it's rendered it out to like an image sequence that is easier to play back, and then you shouldn't have any of those render glitches. Now you can see after it's cached, it plays back fine. If you go in and you replace a clip, an insert to something else, maybe I'll use this screenshot here, I'll hit F11 to replace. It turns red again. It's gonna need to re-render each time, but this is not really taking all that long at all to get another screen in there for someone to preview. Now the other thing that I really like about this workflow is this works nice with video files as your insert as well. So I do have a video clip screen insert up here from a previous tutorial that has some movement that we need to get timed precisely to the action of the arm movement that's happening in the shot. I'm gonna just take this and do what I did before, place it at frame 1, and then I'll do the replace edit, this command right here. And once I start to see what's happening, there's an arm movement that kind of indicates that something should be happening on screen, but nothing is happening. And if I look at the source, the original clip, I'm going to match frame to it. I'll just hit F to match frame. You can see later in this clip, there is movement. There's some trimming that happens. How do we use the slip edit is the question with this. Well, it's really simple. When you do a slip edit in DaVinci Resolve, there's a default that is turned on that I think is kind of annoying. So I do like to go up to the view menu and make sure you disable this function right here that says enable multi-view edit preview. Because what this does, it puts like 4 boxes on the screen and it doesn't really show you the exact position of where a frame is, where the playhead's located. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in when this arm moves to right there is when I want to start to see movement on my video screen insert. And so with it selected and with view, enable multi-view edit preview deselected, no checkbox there, what I can do is come over here and I'm going to choose the trim tool. T is the shortcut, so it's this guy right here. And then you can just drag. Now you can drag the top and bottom of the clip. You see the difference here? If I go top of the clip, it's a slip edit. The bottom is called the slide edit. We're interested in the slip edit, which changes the guts based off of this exact frame where I'm parked over. I can just move this, and you can see I'm actually trimming. You can see the tooltip. I'm at -10 frames right now. I'm going to keep doing this until I start to see, going to the left, until I start to see that movement of the video footage inside the insert. And there it starts to go, right there. So right there, we're starting to see some movement on it. So I had to bring it back quite a bit. And if I zoom out, I'm going to hit Command- to zoom out on the clip. You can kind of see there's a little preview box off to the right there of how much footage I actually have left to work with. But this actually should have just timed it out really nicely, and it's going to have to render cache again so that movement doesn't start until he starts to touch the keyboard to do his trims on his monitor right there. So you can see this is a really nice way to be able to place your playhead and dynamically change the insert position on any sort of video clip. One more quick thing to know about reference compositions when it comes to color grading. You've already merged everything together, so the thing you actually color grade is going to be your topmost layer, which has this special Fusion reference composition icon on there, badge. Go to the color page, make sure you're on the topmost layer, and then let's say we wanted to put more contrast into this clip. You can see I'm on video 3 over here. You can just drag the slider and the contrast is affecting this topmost clip. That's where the adjustment happened, not these clips that are down there underneath. This is a really flexible workflow. Remember we used that brightness contrast early on? Go back to Fusion. Maybe I don't want this gain reduced on this one. Maybe I just want to even turn that off completely. That brightens up my screen. And now we've got a brighter screen on the screen insert. It fits really, really nicely. Here's London. I see London, I see France. You know, even this Apple one that's over here, you can sort of see how that one looks. So don't forget when you're using replace edit, it's the 2 playheads that have to be in alignment. So if I do a replace edit and my playhead is right here on my timeline and my source is this video clip that's at the very first frame, it's aligning this frame right here with this position. So if I hit replace edit, there's no footage to the left of this, so I've got this problem here where it cuts from one element to another. That's not going to work. So I'm going to hit undo, bring this to the first frame here. If it's just a still image, that's the way to keep it nice and simple. And now we have the color page visible on the screen insert. We'll let that render cache. We'll see the bar turn blue, and I think that's pretty cool. Now, is this solution pixel perfect? No. But does it get you 90% of the way there in just like 5 or 10 minutes? I think so. Please let me know down in the comments if you want to learn some more advanced compositing techniques, or if you're just dipping your toes in Fusion for the first time and need the basics like this one. I want to help teach you what you need to know. And because there's so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video.